Hey Reddit, honestly never thought I'd end up spilling my family drama on here, but after everything that's happened lately, I really just need to get this out. Grab your popcorn, because this is a mess, and trust me, it only gets crazier from here. First off, calling Sarah a mom still feels strange, like wearing shoes that don't fit. She walked out on me when I was barely 2, leaving Dad to pick up the pieces alone. My dad, Mark, was my world. Even now, years after losing him, I can still remember the comforting smell of his old, worn leather jacket, a mix of cologne and motor oil, the scent of safety I'd fall asleep to as a kid whenever life felt too overwhelming. He wasn't perfect, but he showed up every single day, and that meant everything. Sarah was always supposed to take me on weekends, but more often than not, she just didn't show. I remember sitting on the porch steps for hours, clutching my backpack, my heart sinking deeper with every passing minute. Eventually, Dad would come outside, sigh softly, and put a comforting hand on my shoulder. "Come on, kiddo," he'd say gently, pretending everything was fine. "How about pancakes instead?" He'd smile, but even at 6 years old, I saw the sadness in his eyes, sadness that Sarah had let me down again. When Sarah met Phil, things got even worse. Phil was older, arrogant, and loved playing the hero. He'd swoop in on those rare weekends Sarah did pick me up, trying way too hard to be a dad. One year, at a Father's Day event when Dad couldn't make it because of work, Phil actually showed up uninvited. I'll never forget the way he knelt beside my desk, all smug confidence, whispering, "Jamie, I'm here if you need someone." Even at 10 years old, I felt sick, like he'd just crossed a line he had no right to cross. I quietly shook my head, eyes stinging, thinking, "You're nothing like my dad." Losing Dad at 14 felt like the world had literally stopped spinning. He died suddenly, no warning, no goodbye. I'll never forget standing there, numb and terrified, as my Uncle Pete gently pulled me into his arms, whispering, "We're here, Jamie. We'll get through this." Pete and Rob became my rock after that, my real family. They never rushed my grief or asked me to just move on. Instead, quietly sitting beside me while I cried myself to sleep, night after night. But grief wasn't even my only problem. At Dad's funeral, Phil had the nerve to offer me a place to stay. I'll never forget the smug look on his face, acting like he was rescuing some abandoned puppy. "We've got room for you, Jamie," he'd said, smiling that fake smile. My anger boiled over that day, shouting at him in front of everyone. "Where were you 10 years ago, Phil? Where was Sarah when I was waiting by that window every weekend?" He stormed out, humiliated, and I felt an odd sense of triumph mixed with shame. I moved in with Pete and Rob, my dad's younger brothers, who became my true family. They never pushed me to get over losing Dad. They'd just sit quietly in the living room with me, letting me grieve in peace. For a moment, life felt stable again, but only briefly. Fast forward to now. I'm 27, engaged to Matt, someone who finally makes me feel safe. But at a family party recently, Phil resurfaced, angry he wasn't invited to our engagement party. He cornered me, playing the concerned father act again, even saying, "I'd like to walk you down the aisle." Hearing that made me snap completely. In front of the whole family, I practically screamed at him, "You're not my dad. You never were." He was 10 times the father you'll ever be. I left that party shaking, but felt oddly liberated. Until Emily, my half-sister, called out of nowhere. I'd barely ever spoken to her before, but she sounded terrified. "Jamie," she whispered desperately. "They're coming after Dad's inheritance, Mom and Phil. Watch your back." I felt sick hearing that. Could Sarah and Phil really sink even lower? And if Emily was reaching out, did it mean she was different? Actually someone I could trust? Well, turns out things could get even messier. Emily came to stay with us after Phil and Sarah flipped out on her. And during her stay, another bombshell dropped. Phil had secretly stolen money from Sarah and vanished. Sarah was now broke and sick, abandoned by the man she'd chosen over everyone else. When I went to confront Sarah with Emily, expecting anger, all I saw was a broken woman, looking frail and defeated. It was a shock seeing her like that, so small, so lost, a shadow of the cold, distant figure she'd always been. Then she dared ask for help, hoping I'd share the money Dad had left me. My blood boiled at her audacity, and I snapped. "You abandoned me, Sarah. You don't get to use me to fix your mistakes." Yet, days later, I learned Phil was arrested in Florida, caught trying to scam another woman. A lawyer called to tell me I had yet another half-sibling, Olivia, who also needed help. Somehow, the chaos Sarah and Phil created kept pulling me back in, and I couldn't turn my back on Olivia, not when I'd been in her shoes. Now, with Emily and Olivia living with us, something weirdly beautiful began happening. The three of us slowly became family, real family. Olivia shared old photos and memories, reminding me so much of myself, waiting on steps for parents who never came. It hurt, but at the same time, it gave me hope. We had each other, and maybe that could be enough. The morning of my wedding came, and as Pete and Rob proudly walked me down the aisle, I noticed Sarah at the very back, looking frail and broken. Part of me wanted to push her away again, yet another part, maybe Dad's gentle voice, reminded me that compassion wasn't weakness. At the reception, she approached timidly, handing me a faded picture, Dad, Sarah, and baby me. Her eyes glistened with regret as she whispered, "I'm sorry, Jamie, for everything." Something in me softened, not forgiveness exactly, but acceptance. I replied quietly, "Find peace, Sarah. Just don't come back." That night, under the stars, Matt held me close. For the first time in forever, I felt free. Dad's voice echoed softly in my mind, reminding me that family isn't about blood or obligation. It's about those who stay, who truly care, even when it's hard. A week later, Matt and I discovered I was pregnant. As we shared the news with Emily and Olivia, joy filled the room. We promised each other right then we would break the cycle, never repeat our parents' mistakes. And sitting there, surrounded by the people who chose me every day, I finally understood what family truly meant. It wasn't blood. It was love, real, messy, and unconditional. And for once, that was more than enough. Hey again, Reddit. It's Jamie, back with another update. Honestly, just when I thought I'd finally closed this chaotic chapter, life threw another curveball my way. Things started quieting down after the wedding, and for once, I was letting myself breathe. Emily and Olivia moved into an apartment together a few blocks from us, and watching them build their lives independently felt strangely healing, like somehow, despite everything, our broken family was finally stitching itself back together. Matt and I started decorating the nursery, laughing as we debated paint colors and crib styles, letting ourselves dream about the future without shadows of our past. But the calm didn't last. It never does it? It was a Saturday afternoon when my phone buzzed, flashing Aunt Carol's name across the screen. Immediately, my stomach twisted into a knot. Carol rarely called without something being seriously wrong. "Jamie," Carol's voice was strained, almost panicked. "I don't even know how to tell you this, but Sarah's in the hospital. It's bad." My mind went blank. I didn't want to feel this sharp, sudden pang of anxiety, but it rushed through me anyway, uncontrollable. What happened? I managed, gripping the edge of the counter for support. Carol hesitated before responding softly, "It's cancer, Jamie. Advanced stage. The doctors say, well, they think she only has days, maybe hours. She's asking to see you." I froze, heart hammering painfully in my chest. Years of resentment fought desperately with a tiny, persistent whisper of guilt. The memory of her at my wedding, the sadness, the whispered apology flooded my mind. I glanced at Matt, who stood silently beside me, concern etched deeply on his face. Finally, I managed a shaky reply. "All right, I'll come." We drove silently to the hospital, my hands trembling the entire way. Walking down the bright hallway toward her room felt surreal, memories of past disappointments hitting me hard. My feet felt like concrete, and every step echoed with the weight of a lifetime of anger and abandonment. Inside the room, Sarah looked so fragile, pale skin, dark circles under tired eyes. When she saw me, tears spilled silently down her face. "Jamie, you came." I approached cautiously, feeling like that scared kid again, waiting desperately for her to finally see me. "You asked me to," I said softly, unable to mask the strain in my voice. "Why am I here, Sarah? After everything?" She took a ragged breath, gripping my hand weakly, I searching mine. "Because I'm dying, Jamie. And I know. I've hurt you terribly. I can't undo it, and I won't pretend I deserve forgiveness. But please," she paused, voice breaking, "please take care of your siblings. They're innocent in all this." My chest tightened painfully. "I'm already doing that, Sarah. But I'll never understand why you couldn't do the same for me." She looked down, defeated, then whispered softly, "Because I was selfish. I was a coward. I ran from every responsibility, and by the time I realized what I'd lost, it was too late." For the first time, I believed her. Not because she deserved it, but because there was nothing left to gain by lying. I sighed, feeling years of built-up bitterness slowly begin to dissolve. Quietly, gently, I said, "I hope you find peace, Sarah. For what it's worth, I don't hate you anymore." Her eyes widened briefly, then she nodded slowly, a bittersweet smile forming on her lips. "Thank you," she whispered, voice barely audible. "That means more than you know." 2 days later, Sarah passed quietly in her sleep. At the funeral, standing by Emily and Olivia, I felt strangely empty. Sad, not for the loss of my mother, but for the loss of what she could have been. Still, there was comfort knowing we had each other. For the first time, we stood united, siblings by choice rather than obligation. But life wasn't done surprising me. Days after Sarah's funeral, I got a call from Mr. Thompson again, the lawyer handling Phil's arrest. "Jamie, Phil's trial just wrapped up. He won't be getting out anytime soon, but he asked me to pass a message to you." I hesitated, nervous and wary. "What did he say?" Thompson paused, choosing his words carefully. He said, "Tell Jamie he's sorry. Tell him, for whatever it's worth, he regrets everything." I stood frozen, heart pounding, confused by my own reaction. It didn't erase anything, didn't fix the countless times I'd cried myself to sleep, the birthday parties missed, the hollow ache he and Sarah left behind. But strangely, hearing those words lifted something from my shoulders. I hung up quietly, sinking onto the couch. Matt wrapped his arms around me gently. "You okay?" "Yeah," I whispered, blinking away tears. I guess I didn't know how badly I needed to hear that, even if it changes nothing. Life moved forward. Months passed, filled with ultrasounds, late-night ice cream cravings, and decorating the nursery. I found myself laughing again. Real laughter, carefree and genuine, something I'd thought I'd forgotten how to do after Dad died. And the day our daughter, Amelia, was born, everything changed. Holding her tiny hand, watching Matt gently kiss her forehead, I felt tears silently slide down my cheeks, not from sadness, but from sheer joy. I imagined Dad standing beside me, beaming proudly, whispering, "You did good, kiddo." Later, Emily and Olivia came to the hospital. Watching them carefully cradle Amelia, smiling softly, whispering how perfect she was, I finally understood what Dad had meant when he told me family wasn't defined by blood, but by love and loyalty. That night, as I rocked Amelia gently in my arms, I whispered softly, promising her she'd never feel the pain I had, that I'd always show up for her, no matter what. Because that's the thing about life, sometimes it breaks you, only to hand you something beautiful from the pieces. In the end, Sarah and Phil couldn't break me, no matter how hard they tried. Instead, they'd given me Emily, Olivia, and the clarity to understand exactly what kind of parent and what kind of person I wanted to be. I might never fully forgive Sarah or Phil, but in the end, that didn't matter. What mattered was the family I'd built, real and perfect and chosen. For the first time, looking around at the people I loved, I realized I was finally home. Hey Reddit, Jamie here again. Honestly, after everything I've shared, I thought my story had wrapped itself up neatly enough. But apparently life wasn't quite done throwing curveballs at me yet. About 6 months after Amelia was born, things had finally settled into what felt like a perfect routine. Nights spent quietly rocking her to sleep, mornings waking up beside Matt, weekends filled with laughter and family dinners with Emily and Olivia. Life was finally peaceful. And then, just when I least expected it, another call shook everything to the core again. I was home alone with Amelia, sipping cold coffee while folding tiny laundry. I swear, how can one baby create so much laundry? My phone vibrated softly on the coffee table, and the name on the screen made my stomach drop. Aunt Carol. "Jamie," she started, voice hesitant and heavy with emotion. "Honey, I'm so sorry to disturb you again, but something's come up. It's about your dad." My heart instantly started pounding, breath hitching in my throat. "My dad? What do you mean? What about him?" She hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. "Sweetheart, it's probably better if you come see this in person. There's something you need to know." The drive to Aunt Carol's house felt painfully long. Every possibility raced through my head. Dad had been gone for years. What more could there possibly be? Emily rode with me, holding my hand the entire drive. Her presence the only thing grounding me as anxiety gnawed at my chest. When we arrived, Carol ushered us into her cozy living room, cluttered with familiar photos and trinkets. She silently handed me a box, a small, worn-out shoebox, taped shut and faded with age. "What's this?" I whispered, my hands trembling slightly. "Mark gave this to me years ago, shortly after Sarah left," Carol explained gently, eyes misting over. He asked me to keep it safe until you were ready. Honestly, I forgot about it until recently. After everything you've been through, you deserve whatever closure this might offer. With shaking hands, I slowly opened the box. Inside were stacks of letters, hundreds of them, all neatly written in Dad's familiar handwriting, addressed directly to me. Letters? Emily asked softly, leaning closer. From your dad? My heart squeezed painfully in my chest. Yeah, I whispered, tears already starting to blur my vision. They're dated. Every birthday, every Christmas, even random days, he wrote to me constantly. Carol touched my shoulder gently. He wrote them to give to you when you were older, to make sure you'd always know how loved you were. Even during his hardest days, Jamie, you were all he ever thought about. I opened one letter at random, dated on my 10th birthday. Hey, kiddo, today you turned 10, and I can't believe how fast you're growing up. I'm writing because sometimes I worry you wonder if you were enough for your mom. Jamie, please believe me, it was never your fault. You were more than enough. You were everything. I'm sorry she can't see that, but I always have, and I always will. By the end of the letter, tears spilled freely down my cheeks. Each word felt like a warm hug from him, reminding me of nights spent under blankets on our old couch, watching movies until we fell asleep. Emily rubbed my back quietly, letting me cry as I read through letter after letter, feeling Dad's presence so vividly, as though he were right there beside me. Later that night, back at home, Matt found me curled up on the couch, a pile of letters scattered around me. He sat down carefully, pulling me close without a word. Finally, after a long silence, I whispered, You know what's crazy? All these years, I thought Sarah left because of me. But Dad knew, he knew I'd feel that way. He wrote all these letters just to make sure someday I'd finally understand. Matt gently kissed the top of my head. Your dad knew exactly who you'd become, Jamie. Strong, kind, brave. He'd be so damn proud of you. I glanced toward Amelia's room, softly lit by the glow of her nightlight. In that moment, holding Dad's letters, feeling Matt's heartbeat steady against mine, I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't forgiveness for Sarah, not exactly, but it was clarity, understanding that none of it had ever been my fault. But my peace didn't last long. Just days after reading Dad's letters, another call came, this time from an unknown number, late at night. A chill ran down my spine as I answered cautiously. Hello. Silence filled the line, then finally, a hesitant voice spoke, one I hadn't heard in years. Jamie? It's Phil. Instantly, anger surged, hot and bitter, flooding every nerve. How the hell are you calling me, Phil? You're supposed to be in prison. He sighed, voice tired, defeated. I know, Jamie. They gave me limited phone privileges because I'm sick, really sick. Doctors say I've got months, maybe less. Look, I'm not expecting sympathy. I need to tell you something important. What could you possibly say to me that matters anymore, Phil? I spat bitterly, fingers gripping the phone painfully tight. He took a shaky breath. Sarah, she didn't just leave you because she was selfish. She left because of me. I pressured her, manipulated her, told her you'd be better off without her. I did it because I wanted control. And by the time she realized the truth, it was too late. My breath caught painfully in my throat. Why are you telling me this now? After everything you've done? Because you deserve the truth, Phil whispered quietly, sounding almost genuine. And because Sarah died carrying that guilt. She blamed herself until the end, but the truth is, it was always me. After hanging up, I stood frozen, heart racing wildly. Sarah hadn't left just because I wasn't enough. She'd been manipulated, controlled, trapped by Phil's twisted games. Suddenly, pieces of my childhood, Sarah's cold distance, her desperate looks, Phil's possessiveness, fell into horrifying clarity. I sat down heavily on the bed, Matt gently putting an arm around me. What happened? He asked softly, concerned. I just learned the truth, I whispered, tears filling my eyes again. Everything I believed about Sarah, about why she left. Phil destroyed it all. He manipulated her into leaving, into abandoning me. It was never because she didn't love me. It was because she trusted the wrong person. Matt held me tighter, voice gentle, reassuring. You know what matters now, Jamie? You stopped it. The cycle ends here. Amelia, Emily, Olivia, they're safe because of you. I nodded slowly, feeling the weight lift just slightly. Yes, Phil had broken my family, but he didn't break me. He didn't break us. Because the letters, the truth, and the life I built proved something Dad always knew. Love is stronger than pain. And no matter what secrets came next, that was the truth I chose to carry forward. Hey Reddit, Jamie again, back with another update I honestly never thought I'd be writing. Life's been pretty relentless lately, but just when I figured things couldn't get crazier, here we go again. After that bizarre call from Phil, I thought I finally had all the pieces. Knowing he had manipulated Sarah into leaving me, it didn't erase the pain, but it lifted a weight I'd carried since childhood. For the first time, I could breathe a little easier, hold Amelia without that old, familiar fear that I somehow wasn't enough. But of course, peace around here is never permanent. It was a chilly Friday afternoon, and I was home sorting through Amelia's toys, humming softly to myself. The doorbell rang unexpectedly, making me jump a little. When I opened the door, my heart nearly stopped. Standing on my doorstep was a young woman I'd never seen before, with eyes exactly like mine, blue, cautious, guarded. "Hi," she said hesitantly, nervously twisting the sleeve of her sweater. "I'm guessing you're Jamie?" "Yeah," I replied slowly, a sudden chill washing over me. "And you are?" She swallowed hard, eyes flickering anxiously. "My name's Hannah. I think I'm your sister." Another one of Phil's kids. I just stared for a moment, brain refusing to process what I just heard. Another sibling? Another victim? Finally, I stepped aside, letting her in. She moved carefully into the apartment, eyes scanning everything nervously, as if worried I'd throw her out any second. Seeing her like this felt painfully familiar. I knew exactly how she felt. Lost, scared, unsure if she'd be accepted or rejected. "Sorry for just showing up like this," Hannah whispered, eyes downcast. "But Phil, he gave me your address. Said you're the only one who might understand." I sat slowly on the couch, motioning her to sit beside me. "How did you find him?" I asked softly, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. She sighed deeply, running a hand through her messy brown hair. "He reached out to me from prison. Told me he was dying, and suddenly he wants forgiveness. But after what he did to my mom, I couldn't just accept his apology." "What did he do to her?" I asked gently, my heart pounding painfully. I knew Phil had left behind a trail of hurt, but facing another victim in person was gut-wrenching. Hannah's voice wavered slightly. "He met her shortly after he left Sarah. My mom fell for him hard. He charmed her, manipulated her, and when she got pregnant, he disappeared overnight. No explanation, no goodbye. Just vanished. I spent years blaming myself, wondering why I wasn't good enough for my dad to stay." As Hannah spoke, I felt tears sting my eyes. It was like looking into a mirror, a reflection of my own painful childhood. Phil's trail of broken families felt endless, but this time, anger outweighed sadness. "Hannah, listen to me," I said firmly, placing my hand gently over hers. "It was never about us. It was always him. We weren't the problem. He was." Hannah's eyes filled with relief, as if she'd waited years for someone to say exactly that. "I just needed to hear that from someone who understood," she whispered, voice thick with emotion. We sat quietly together for a long moment, absorbing each other's presence, finding comfort in knowing we weren't alone anymore. Over the next few days, Hannah spent time getting to know Emily and Olivia too. Watching them bond, sharing stories, laughing quietly over takeout, it felt surreal. My apartment, once filled with silence and grief, now echoed with the sounds of siblings finally finding their way home. One evening, after Hannah had gone back to her hotel, Matt wrapped his arms around me from behind as I stood washing dishes. "You okay, Jamie?" he asked gently, his voice warm against my ear. I sighed softly, leaning back into him. "Honestly, I don't know. It's hard. Every time I think we've healed, someone else appears, another wound opens." Matt kissed the top of my head softly. "But think about it. Every person who shows up here finds safety because of you. You're fixing what Phil broke." I turned slowly, meeting Matt's eyes. "I hope you're right. I just wish the past would finally leave us alone. But wishes rarely come true around here." Less than a week later, my phone rang again, another unknown number, another jolt of dread. This time, the voice on the other end sounded official and serious. "Is this Jamie Harris?" "Yes," I answered cautiously. "Who's calling?" "I'm Detective Ramirez with Houston PD," the voice replied calmly. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I need to speak with you about your stepfather, Philip Anderson. There's been an incident." My heart sank. "What kind of incident?" He hesitated slightly before answering carefully. "He escaped custody yesterday. We believe he's headed your way." My blood ran ice cold, breath catching sharply. Phil, the manipulator, the ghost of my childhood nightmares, on the loose, possibly heading straight to us? I hung up after promising the detective I'd call if Phil appeared, then sat frozen in fear. Images flashed through my mind: Phil angry, Phil desperate, Phil unpredictable. Matt held me tightly, speaking quietly. "He won't get anywhere near you or Amelia. I promise." I nodded weakly, terrified but determined. Because this time, I wasn't alone. This time, Phil wouldn't win. Not again. The next few nights, we barely slept, jumping at every sound, every shadow. Then, on a dark, stormy evening, someone knocked sharply at our door, making both of us tense instantly. Matt grabbed a baseball bat, standing protectively before me as he opened the door. Phil stood there, pale and gaunt, soaked from the rain, eyes hollow and desperate. "I'm not here to hurt anyone," he pleaded softly, voice breaking. "Please, Jamie, just hear me out one last time." I stepped forward, trembling with fear and anger but refusing to show weakness. "You have 2 minutes, Phil. Then I'm calling the police." He swallowed hard, looking directly into my eyes. "I know I can't fix this. I've destroyed everything. But there's one more thing you need to know. The money I stole, it's hidden. You and your sisters, it belongs to you. Not me. Never me." I hesitated, heart pounding. "Why should I believe you now?" Phil's eyes filled with regret, genuine and raw. "Because I'm dying, Jamie. And if there's anything left of the man I once wanted to be, it's that you deserve better than what I gave you." I stared at him silently, then finally nodded slowly. "Tell me where it is." As Phil quietly explained, I saw the truth in his eyes. He genuinely wanted this last chance at redemption. Moments later, sirens echoed down the street. Phil nodded quietly, resigned. "I'm sorry," he whispered softly. "For everything." As police took him away, I stood watching silently, finally feeling a strange mix of closure and sadness. Phil was gone again, but this time on my terms. Back inside, I sank onto the couch beside Matt, exhausted. "It's over," I whispered. Matt gently wrapped his arms around me, smiling softly. "No, Jamie. It's just beginning your real life, the one you've earned." And for once, looking around at my family, real, messy, imperfect, I believed him. "Hey Reddit, Jamie here for one last update. It's wild thinking about how this all started. Me just trying to make sense of my messed up family drama. I never thought I'd end up here, finally feeling okay. Not perfect, but okay. And honestly, after everything, that's more than enough." After Phil's arrest at our doorstep, things felt surreal for weeks. Sometimes I'd wake in the night, heart racing, convinced he was back. Each time, Matt would quietly pull me closer, whispering softly, "You're safe, Jamie. It's over now." And eventually, those nightmares faded, replaced with quiet mornings and peaceful evenings spent watching Amelia grow. Phil kept his promise about the stolen money. Police quickly found it, hidden in a safety deposit box under a fake name. The money wasn't life-changing, but it helped secure Amelia's future, along with Emily's, Olivia's, and Hannah's. It felt oddly fitting, like Phil's twisted cycle had finally been broken. Life settled into a rhythm after that. Hannah moved to Houston permanently, finding an apartment close to Emily and Olivia. Every Sunday, our little family gathered for dinner at our place, laughing, teasing, and gently reminding each other we weren't alone anymore. It felt warm and safe in a way I'd forgotten existed. One evening, as we cleared the table, Emily paused suddenly, turning to me with an odd, thoughtful look. "What's up, Em?" I asked softly, nudging her gently with my elbow. She smiled softly, eyes glistening slightly. "You know what's crazy? I spent my entire childhood wishing someone would just show up and rescue me, someone who understood exactly what I felt. And now, here we all are. We finally found each other." Her words hit me harder than I expected. I smiled back, gently squeezing her hand. "Yeah, somehow, out of all that chaos, we got each other. It feels good." Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Amelia's first birthday arrived, bringing with it balloons, cupcakes, and laughter that echoed throughout our tiny apartment. As Matt helped Amelia smash cake into her tiny face, I watched silently, tears blurring my vision. Dad would have loved this moment. He always dreamed of big family parties, laughter spilling from every corner. When everyone left, I found myself quietly sorting through the old letters Dad had written me, each word still comforting. That's when I discovered something I'd missed before, a sealed envelope tucked beneath the others, marked simply, "To Jamie, on the day you finally find peace." My heart skipped as I opened it carefully, hands shaking slightly. Inside was a brief note, Dad's handwriting careful and gentle. "Hey kiddo, if you're reading this, it means you made it. You're finally free of the weight you carried for too long. Remember, family isn't about perfection. It's about love, forgiveness, and choosing each other, even when it's hard. I'm proud of you, Jamie. Always have been. Always will be. Now go live the beautiful life you deserve." Tears streamed silently down my face, clutching his words tightly. In that quiet moment, I felt Dad's presence stronger than ever before. He'd been right. Family wasn't blood, wasn't obligation, wasn't even history. Family was laughter around a crowded dinner table, whispered reassurances in the dark, quiet smiles over coffee. It was Matt holding Amelia close, Emily's quiet courage, Olivia's fierce loyalty, Hannah's vulnerability, and me finally whole, finally free. That night, after putting Amelia to bed, I stood quietly at our balcony railing, staring at the stars. Matt joined me, wrapping an arm gently around my waist. "Everything okay?" he whispered softly. "Better than okay," I replied, leaning my head against his shoulder. "I think I finally understand what Dad wanted me to know." "And what's that?" Matt asked, his voice warm and gentle. I smiled quietly into the night. "That family is something you build, day by day, choice by choice. It's the people who never leave, who love you through every mess. It's us." Matt squeezed my hand gently, smiling softly. "Always." And in that simple, quiet moment, I finally felt at peace. My past no longer defined me, only love did. Thanks, Reddit, for sticking with me through this ride. Wherever you are in your own messy story, I promise, there's hope. Sometimes the family we need most is the one we build ourselves. Take care out there.